All right, everybody. I've got my friend Coach Bronson back on the show. We just got off the cruise. Is that your cruise ship
That right?
dance?
Did you do
I
limbo? Did you do limbo while you were on the cruise?
When was that? I like
I
go
don't
to
know.
bed too
There's all
early.
there's you can't
I missed all the evening entertainment.
the evening entertainment. Yeah, there's always limbo on a cruise somewhere.
Yeah, that seems very
That's the
cruise
thing.
ship-ish, or like you
Yeah.
watched too much Love Boat growing up as a kid.
We're
Love Boat, they
dating
probably had that on.
ourselves.
So we were on the cruise, low carb cruise again. And I just always love that week because it's
Mhm.
just connecting with people like-minded and listen to different stories and adventures. And I think it's funny being in this industry so long as an athlete, a coach, and into nutrition that everyone was talking about eat more protein instead of eat more fat, eat more fat. So now we went from
Finally.
keto to carnivore and more of a, I love what Dr. Ken Berry says. Ken talks about the proper human diet. And that's what I like to say. How should you eat? Eat real food that balances your blood sugar, nutrient dense foods, and anti-inflammatory. And when you take out what's left, I would say it ends up just being meat. But
Yeah.
I want to talk to you about that a little more today. It's like, why should we be more, when should we be more strict carnivore? Is it just a reset? Is it
Mhm.
appropriate for people that in my audience are endurance athletes? They're doing long training, they're racing, because I get a lot of people listening to all this information, but we're not the people that might be in our conference that have more metabolic issues. So when is it appropriate to be carnivore or keto carnivore or proper human diet,
Sure.
or what do we
Sure.
say? So let's
Yeah.
just dive
Yeah.
into why you choose to eat more of an animal-based diet. Are you strict carnivore and or not, or what's your why
Yeah.
and your purpose?
I don't know if I'm strict carnivore because I don't know where the rule book for carnivore is. I've
Let's
never
go
seen
back to
one.
caveman days and they wrote
Right?
it on a
Did
wall
they write
somewhere.
something
It's
down?
on a
Like,
sketched, it's hammered
I
into
don't know
a
what that
cave.
means. Like, this is part of the issue and the confusion a lot of people have with all these dietary protocols, if you want to even call them. It's more like dietary social media, whims. Somebody said something, so that must be the way it is.
Mhm.
Um, None of it's written down, and it's what's working for that person who's talking about it, but that may not work for you. So my guiding principle for all of this stuff is do what works for you and something that you can sustain.
Mhm.
That's it. If you
Yeah.
can't keep it up, then why are you doing it? If it's not working, then why are you doing
My words here I have written down. Why the purpose and sustainable. You just said all that.
it? Right? Like that's really what it's all about. So I like how you brought at the beginning that a lot of the people that do go to these events, conferences are not. They're at a place where they're still in the healing process. They are not
Yes.
metabolically sound. They are not athletic. They are not active. And a lot of people that you talk to, and I'm trying to get more people to that place. Like my
Mhm.
goal as a fitness guy in this space is you got to start moving your body and getting people to realize that it's not just nutrition. Physical activity is part of the equation.
Yeah.
So I'm still, even for my audience, most of my audience is not at that space,
Mhm.
at that place yet. But there are differences in how things work based on your metabolic condition, right? I tell people all the time, don't look at what I'm doing as someone who's been healed for over 5 years, who is physically active, has zero metabolic issues, and can do anything that I want to do physically because I have no physical limitations. Don't look at what I'm doing and then try to copy me
Yeah.
because it's not
Exactly.
going to work for you. You're going to run
Mhm.
into a wall. You're going to get frustrated and be like, why is nothing working? It's
Mhm.
because we're different people, we're different places. So, that being said, and this is really where I, I'd like the focus of this conversation to be is for everyone to understand that the principles of how our bodies work don't change.
Mhm.
Our bodies function the same.
Mhm.
What we're doing, what our preferences are, what our goals are, the things that we have in our daily lives that we're dealing with, the overall stress that we have that we're putting on ourselves, that life is putting on. Like there's a million things in the list of variables that impact what's going to work for somebody and what's not going to work for somebody. and understanding how those things are impacted by the principles that don't change. The principles of nutrition, what we need for optimal nutrition, don't change. The principles for fitness and what we need for optimal fitness don't change, right? Greg Glassman, the founder of CrossFit, said it the best. And I'm going to totally botch this quote, but the demands change in degree, not kind. The things that we have to do and the things that every individual's life experience is requiring of them are different in the level and the impact and the intensity and the complexity of what is going on in their lives. The function and the principles and the concepts used to make all that stuff happen don't change. So that's one thing I really want people to understand, right? So when we talk about nutrition, you know, my three, and this is what I've come up with. This may not be what anyone else has come up with, but these are my three tenets for nutrition: nutrient density, bioavailability, and satiety.
Yes, for sure.
Those are the key. Like if you focus on those three things, 99% of the time, you're going to make a better decision than not, regardless of what nutrition protocol or method you're following. Right. So if you apply, let's say we apply my preference, I can't stand just eating meat all the time. I've got to have some veggies. Okay, great. That is something that is in your experience. You want to have some veggies, go have some veggies. What choices you make based on those three things? What veggie do you want to have? And if it's between a mix between white rice or corn and asparagus or Brussels sprouts, right? Which one is going to give you the most nutrient density, the most bioavailability, and the most satiety? And maybe it's how you prepare it. Maybe like there's, again, the variables come into what you're doing, not how it works when you do it. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's kind of what I want people to understand.
But I think that's important because that's what I always talk to my clients about, like focus on what foods make you feel good, energized, and feel full for hours. And for me, I tried explaining this in a video the other day that I choose not to eat a lot of carbohydrates because they do not make me feel full. I choose to not do wheat and gluten because I got my Vibrant Wellness test and I was off the charts, like literally for inflammation from anything with wheat. So I know I have to avoid that. But I know from my previous years in college, if I have bread, talk about, you know, listening to all these food addicts last week, carb addicts. I was like, oh my God, that's me. If I have bread, if I didn't have that food sensitivity reaction, I can eat a whole basket of bread and not feel full. I can eat a dozen bagels. I used to live off bagels in college. That's all, you know, it was healthy because it was fat free. And back in my days in college, 89 to 94, whatever I was in college, that's what, you know, we ate fat free everything. I ate all carbs. And so I think I'm carb insensitive. My genetics show that as well. I'm more intolerant. So for my unique self, my genetics, my previous life, I do not do well with carbohydrates. And I, you know, vegetables I can do, but I do not feel full if I have a big salad. And for years before I got into the keto and now more carnivore, eating more animal-based diet, I could eat a big, huge bowl of salad every day because that was healthy back then. We thought we're doing the right thing. I was always looked at as a healthy eater. Debbie, oh my gosh, she's such a good eater. She doesn't eat this or that. Well, I was always hungry. So unless I eat like, you know, a ton of chicken or now steak and seafood and stuff. So anyways, I think it is unique to that individual, but it is stop and think, how does that food make me feel? Does it make me binge and overeat, or does it give me energy, or does it make me feel bloated and gassy and all those side effects?
Yeah, and it's not even just how does it make you feel, is it having an effect on your health?
Yeah.
And then when you're talking about athletes, is it having an effect on your performance? Is it having an effect on your recovery? Is it having an effect on your mental clarity and mental performance? Like there's so many things that the choices we make, and this is from a fitness perspective as well, when it comes to overtraining, making the choices of what you're going to do for a given workout, what programs you're following, things like that. So both of these things, and I think that's where we get into a mindset shift that I like to work with my clients and I like to talk about with people is we can get away from the subjective, how do I feel, and start thinking and start looking at this like finances or a business or an investment, and start looking at this as a net gain or net loss.
Yeah.
And the questions that I'm going to ask myself are, if I make this choice, is it going to move me forward or is it going to move me back?
Backwards. Yeah.
And take the emotion, I know it's easier than it sounds, or it's harder than it sounds sometimes, but if you can start getting your mindset into, and this is what I did for alcohol for me. Once I learned and really got into, because I went through a process of many years ago, I did a 3-week alcohol detox, 3 weeks, 21 days. I lost 10 pounds of fat in 3 weeks.
Wow.
No muscle loss, slept better, felt amazing. 3 pounds of fat, or 10 pounds of fat in 3 weeks, just by stopping. And it wasn't even a lot. It was like 3 glasses of whiskey a week. Like, it wasn't even like I was
Every
drinking
night.
every night, drinking
Mm.
beer, anything like that. It was literally whiskey on the rocks 3 nights a week. So that got me into like, what the hell is alcohol doing and what's up with all this? So I really dug into alcohol, and the more I learned about alcohol and what it did to the body and how it affected the metabolism and oxidative priority and acetaldehydes and just all of the things, I was like,
Yeah. Not
this is
good.
an obvious net zero, net negative. If I do this, this is
Yeah.
done. Like, I am done with alcohol and never happening again. And I had maybe one drink of alcohol in 5, 6 years.
Mm.
And it wasn't even hard for me to stop. It was such an obvious, this cannot touch my body, because of that net loss, net gain philosophy mindset, that it just made that process so much easier. So for anybody that's like, I don't know if I can make the changes, what decision should I make? Find out.
Yeah.
Look at those criteria: nutrient density, bioavailability, satiety. Is it a net gain or a net loss, the choice that you're about to make?
Mm-hmm. And then you tie that in, as we're saying, excuse me, performance gains. If
Yep.
I'm trying to help people fuel, train, and perform for just daily life, but also if people are doing events and races this year. And of course, the big goal everyone should be looking for is their future self, how we're going to be forming in life 20, 30 years from now. And
Yes.
I think it's so important to look at, you can't out exercise a poor diet, and you can't out supplement poor nutrition and lifestyle habits. And I really try to teach people that when I'm coaching them individually with the holistic method elements, that it's so important. But for performance, the nutrition part so confusing is the main point of this show, is because people will listen to Dr. Mindy Pels, to Dr. Kim Berry, to all these different people out
None
there on
of them
podcasts.
are athletes or have any idea how athletes need to do anything.
Exactly.
I
And
love
that's
them
why I keep
all.
trying to
I love
sort it
them
out.
all. But we have to, okay, this is the number one thing to understand, is you have to apply context.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it's not just context to the information, it's context to the person giving the information, and it's context to you. There's three
Yeah.
parts to all context. Okay. It's
Who's our
communication.
audience?
It's communication, right? It's the
Mm-hmm.
sender, it's the message, it's the receiver.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can understand that, then we can look at the sender. Where are they coming from? If you're listening to a doctor who's got medical clinical practice experience, they're not talking to you as an athlete. I can tell
Yeah,
you that right now. They're not. They're
exactly.
talking to people who are medically unhealthy and they're trying to save people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
That's who they're talking to. The advice that they're giving you, you can evaluate that information for the principles that they're following, and you can extrapolate those principles and see how those principles apply to your situation. But the tactics, the strategies, and the methodologies that they're using probably don't really apply to you if you are metabolically healthy, physically active, and a competitive athlete.
Yeah,
Because they're not talking to you.
exactly.
Okay.
That's my
So
point.
just, you need
Trying
to
to make to
understand,
everyone.
everyone needs to
Yeah.
understand that. Now, if you're the only doctor I would say that's a medical clinical doctor would be Dr. Nally. Because he might
Mm-hmm.
be the doc. I mean, he's Doc Muscles. Like, come on,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. He's been on
so,
the
and
show.
who's not a researcher kind of doctor, right? Maybe Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, but I don't know if she has an athletic background. I don't know her full story. I know she's all into muscle and that kind of stuff, but there's very few people that have medical experience that are in that space. So if you're looking for athletes if you're an athlete and you're looking for information on how to be able to perform best as an athlete following a ketogenic or carnivore diet, then you should be talking to people who have experience working with athletes following a ketogenic or carnivore diet.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
And
what,
that's pretty much it. And the people that, from a scientific perspective, I think we know, everybody knows, on the top of the list, we got Finney, Volek, and Noakes at the top of the chain, right? From a
yeah.
scientific perspective. Dr. Sivas has worked with Dr. Noakes a lot. He's got a lot of information. I've had a lot of conversations with Dr. Sivas. I've had a lot of conversations with Bart Kay, had a lot of conversations with Dave Feldman. There's a lot of people that I've talked with, trying to understand more of the science of the stuff. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a biologist. So everything that I have in my head is stuff that I've pulled from other people
Yeah.
and experimented with the people that I work in with myself. So
Mhm.
I can tell you for a fact a whole bunch of things about what I've seen in real life about what works.
Mhm.
And probably 85, 90% of it, I can explain with something scientific, right? Because
Yeah.
that's not what I do. But I have
Well,
dug and tried to figure out, okay, what's the mechanism behind this? Why do I see this happening in this person, but not in that person? And different things like that. So for sure.
look, but that's a lot of the studies. You look at who are they done on, and that's my issue.
Right.
Is like, all right, okay, let's look at this. Even the faster study is one endurance sport research study that was done on ketogenic athletes doing endurance work, and it was all men and
Yep.
not women because they're difficult to study. So I think it's always looking at who, and that's why I'm always more.
Women
And
aren't difficult to study. What are you talking about?
well, unless they're postmenopausal, then they're kind of more equal. But before that, we're a mess with hormone cycling. But I think it's so interesting to look at, read the studies, but it's such an N=1 experiment. And that's why I say it isn't one size fits all. Let's take
Yep.
all this information and experiment and course correct. That's why we are coaches, so people can work with us and we observe and learn and let's try this and try that. That didn't work and move on. But
Right.
it is
Yeah.
an ongoing journey. And
Yeah.
it
For sure.
isn't everyone should do strict carnivore, is what we're getting to. And then should they do, zero carb, all carbs evil, and where to time them is what we've been talking about. Like, okay, post workout, or do you need them when your zone 2 is more fat burning versus you're doing anaerobic workout? So you're more strength training, kind of heavy lifting, CrossFit-ish type workout, right?
Yeah, I work with everybody. I work with runners, I work with triathletes, I work with CrossFitters, I work with power lifters, Olympic lifters. Like I've done a little bit of all of it. And everybody I've worked with since I've been doing this for about 5 years on the carnivore keto side, everybody that I've worked with across the board has seen improvements the less carbs they eat.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I
Even
can't.
speed work, like sprint workouts.
Everything, 100%, absolutely,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. And here's the things that I've learned as I've gone through this process, and again, digging and digging and trying to understand this whole metabolism, metabolic function thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, One of the things I learned in the last year, which was different than everything I'd ever been trained in all of my certifications and training, was that every muscle contraction requires glycogen. Now we know, right? Okay, on the surface, we understand that, right? Muscles use glycogen. Great.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea of glycogen depletion is confounded in many ways, in that if we actually depleted the glycogen in our muscles, we would die.
Yeah.
So the idea of glycogen depletion doesn't actually exist
Yeah. Because our body is
because
smart.
our body we'd be in rigor mortis essentially. No
Yeah.
muscles would contract, and our heart would stop, our diaphragm would stop working, our blood would stop pumping, our intestinal tract would stop working, like we would die. Like we actually ran out of glycogen. So the idea that we have to replenish glycogen after a workout doesn't make sense in that context. Well, if we're not actually ever running out of glycogen for our muscles to use, then what am I replenishing? And starting to put some of these pieces together, I kind of came up with an analogy. I don't know if you've heard me talk before. I'm big on analogies. I try to draw pictures for people so we can understand this. And I came up with the pool and the hose, right? So essentially, what our body is doing is we've got to store glycogen, we've got to store fat, and our body uses that glycogen for muscle contraction. But at the same time, especially if we're ketogenic, if we're fat adapted, our body's using that second reservoir, and let's call it the big pool. We got the baby pool and the big pool, right? The baby pool is the glycogen and the big pool is the fat. We're pulling from that big pool through a secondary hose that is then refeeding into that glycogen pool, into that baby pool. So what people don't understand, and I have this conversation on a regular basis, is that gluconeogenesis, a lot of people think gluconeogenesis is, the body turning protein into glycogen, and it is, but it's also utilizing the substrates as a byproduct of ketogenesis to turn them into glycogen. So pyruvate, acetate, lactate, those things can go into the process of creating glycogen for the body. So our body is always, all of the time, replenishing glycogen stores from fat. And if you do look at the work of Dr. Finney, I think in the 80s, he showed that there's a up to and potentially more. Just the one study that I think from 1980 he did showed a 50% increase in fat oxidation after 8 weeks of fat adaptation. So we know that if you're fat adapted, your body's going to use more fat to replenish that glycogen because it has to get it from there. So that cycle actually works. So the need to ingest sugar or the need to ingest carbs in order to produce glycogen, I think the more fat adapted you are, the less that need goes down.
Yes.
That's just been my experience.
No, yeah, we've talked about that for 10 years on here.
Right.
That's kind of what I try to explain to people, that they don't need as much when you're fat adapted. And now that I bought my new fitness testing equipment, I test people's metabolism, which I used to do 10 years ago at rest and during exercise. So you can really see and then retest people to say, okay, are you training your body to burn fat at rest? And I need some people, because I was just demoing on people that I know last month, but I need some people that don't follow this food plan.
So
I need a normal person to test.
I need a regular,
you're all good
standard
at
American
burning
diet
fat.
person.
I want to see someone that's messed up. So I think it is teaching people that you don't need to depend on carbs, and that you can, and timing it. And that's where I think it's, what we eat. So going into exercise, if you wake up and work out, the whole conversation is, do you eat or not eat before a workout? And if it's when I wake up in the morning, I'm going to have coffee and water and my sea salt in my water. Do I have the dinner night before? So it's kind of that I look at people's nutrient timing, because a lot of times I don't eat dinner late at night, especially school nights. I'll eat, be done eating at 3:00. So it is kind of looking at that individual schedule. Should you eat some calories or not eat? I was like, okay, are you hungry? Then
and how do you perform?
And how's your performance? Exactly.
If talking to athletes, honestly, we're going to change. We're going to make sure. I'm so used to talking to non-athletes, so we're going to talk to athletes. If you're an athlete and your question is, should I eat before? Should I work out fasted or not?
Yes.
Do you perform better fasted or not?
Exactly. My question. So it's like, how's your performance?
That's the determining factor.
If you suck air and you're dragging, and then maybe you should adjust something. But if you feel great, you're good.
You feel great. And then the other, and to take that even a step further, it's not even just the workout. How do you feel after the workout?
Yeah.
Because you could eat before you work out and then feel great during the workout. And then right after the workout, you're done. You're sitting around, and you're like, oh, this does not feel good. You know what I mean? It's because you got this food that you ate but hasn't digested because you've been working, and now it's sitting like a brick in your stomach. So you got to look at the whole experience.
Yeah.
And what is working best for you.
Yeah.
I will say, though, no matter what you're doing, you got to get those electrolytes in before you work out.
I know, which I'm doing
a lot more.
A podcast with Redmond's Real Salt in
September.
Awesome. I told him we were all talking about him on the cruise, and everyone's handing around their Redmond Real Salt.
They're sponsoring our conference. They're going to be at our conference.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I love their salt, but I think it is so scary for people think. That's why I want him on the show. Like, oh, I can't do sodium. Sodium is bad for me. Like, what? No.
It's so good for you.
I know. So that's why I think it is looking at when you're working out, what type of workout it is, duration and intensity, time of day. Do you need to eat, or maybe just some liquid calories in your coffee, or just electrolytes and water, but also looking at when did you stop eating the night before? Because a lot of times, as I said, I haven't eaten for a long time. And so my struggle is always eating enough. I'm finding it's hard to get busy when you have a big meal at 2:00 in the afternoon. I'm kind of full for the rest of the day. So what do you find works for you and for me, for your body?
I like to, so I right now I'm trying to get more food in, but my schedule is making it difficult. So right now I do about 24 ounces of ground beef at 11:30, 12 o'clock during the day. And then I get home, I go to the gym around 5 o'clock, and then I eat when I get back around 6:30. And that's pretty much that's pretty much what I'm doing. So I usually eat a good meal. Like today I came home from the gym and I had, because I was getting on this call, I didn't get to make all that I normally would make, but I got 12 eggs together for dinner tonight. So that was my dinner for
You
tonight
need to move somewhere you
with
have
some butter.
like 100 chickens in the back so you could just have
I
eggs.
do. I
The amount
really
you
do. I
eat
eat
eggs.
so many eggs. So many eggs. I love them.
So I think that's a good example because if you work out later in the day, it's easier to time it to work. Do you allow 2 hours
Right.
before a workout to when to eat, or 3 hours?
I mean, I've worked out, I've eaten, and then went right to the gym. It just kind of
Yeah.
depends on how I feel. And, you know, for me, I'm very, so maybe I'm different, but I feel like probably not. I feel like a lot of athletes are like, if it's time to work out, it's time to work out. I'm going to eat and then I'm going to work out, like whatever. When it's time for me to work out, if I've only got the time right before I go work out, and that's when I need to get my food in, otherwise it's going to be another 4 hours before I eat again, then I'm going to eat and then I'm going to go work out. So it's just, for me, it's just kind of, it is what it is. I'm very pragmatic about my approach when it comes to food and that kind of thing. So
So you
I
focus on
enjoy,
the protein. You enjoy, sorry, finish your sentence.
no, I was gonna say, I enjoy everything, every bite that I ever eat. So I'm not avoiding it at all.
Good. That's important. And that you eat slowly and
Yeah.
mindfully. You're not inhaling it.
Oh, I do that too. Trust
Oh,
me.
chew your food.
I try to enjoy it, but
Yeah. See, that's the thing, we get rushing. So protein, do you do like 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, kind of the Lion protocol, or?
right now I'm at a little over that. I start people off at 1-to-1 for lean mass.
Mhm.
So right now for my lean mass, I'm about 1.5. So I'm doing about 220, 230
And
grams of
then do you
protein.
adjust the fat macros with that to balance that out? Or are you
Yeah, so my
less
fat
fat?
macros are about 165 right now. That's kind of a maintenance, a little below maintenance for me. Maintenance for me is about 175
Mhm.
on the
And
fat
then
side.
do you count? I mean, I hate counting calories, but I know you
I
guys
measure
track
my
everything.
macros when I'm in the process of making adjustments and changing and trying to figure out where I want to be and what I'm trying to do. Then I measure for a period of time till I have a good idea. I pretty much eat the same thing. So once I spend a week and figure out, okay, what are the combinations of food that get me the macros I'm looking for,
Mhm.
then I stop tracking. I just do that for a while, get where I want to go. And then if I need to make some changes, I'll track again, kind of see where I'm at. But, I go through phases back and forth of tracking and not tracking.
Yeah.
My philosophy is if you're not tracking, you're not trying. And if you can't make a change, if you don't know what you're changing.
Yeah.
So if you're happy where you are, then you don't need to track. If you're not happy where you are and you want to change something, you better
You have
start
to
tracking.
track. I know it's hard to do, but you have to see how much you're getting in. Because a lot of times
Yeah.
I have clients doing the chronometer and
Mhm.
they're just like always under 100 grams of protein a day. It's so hard for people to get, especially females, to think, okay, I can have that big, huge steak, and that's
Yeah,
not a
go
pigging
get it.
out.
Go get it. Yeah.
4 eggs is
Oh,
okay.
yep.
So the protein and fat, and then carbs for you. And do you say everyone that you're working with, athletes, depends on the person if they should put any in there, or you just focusing on the protein and fat?
For protein and fat is usually the focus, and the wording is very specific there, right? Should versus want to or could. So
Should,
should
would,
is a
could.
no,
Hmm.
right? If you want to, that's great. We can work it into a plan. Let's see how it affects your performance.
Hmm.
If you could, like, you could do this. Do you want to do this? Like, so all of those things kind of come into play. I don't think should is ever a valid, is it an adjective? Adverb? What is that? What is that in the
Oh my gosh.
grammar?
Don't ask me.
I don't think should is
Yeah,
is
it's
a
not
word, is a
adjective.
qualitative word that we need to use in the
No.
conversation. You can do whatever you want. So
Yes.
if someone wants to have
True.
carbs, then great, have carbs. Do you need to have carbs? No.
Yeah.
The only case that I've seen, and that I've not seen I personally, but heard of, where someone might need carbs is ultra runners, right? They are marathon 26.2 miles. There's no reason why you shouldn't be able to do that fat adapted. If you need to, bring some ketone gels with you. something like that, and you should be fine. Like you don't need carbs for a marathon. If you're running 100 miles, that's a whole nother level that I don't know outside of Zach Bitter, and I don't know if he's done data on his metabolism and blood and VO2 while he's doing that kind of a thing, right? I can't imagine anybody wanting to be hooked up to stuff while they're running 100 miles. You know what I mean? So maybe blood work before, blood work after, to kind of see some kind of benchmark. I'm not sure how. I don't know what data he's got on what he's doing.
I'll have to ask.
Yeah. So I think that'd be very interesting to find out. But outside of the extreme on that end, I have not seen anybody that hasn't had an improvement in their performance, whether it's strength training, high intensity interval training, or endurance training, by not including carbs and making sure they're getting adequate protein and adequate fat.
Now, if you're not doing organ meat, do you feel that people are getting deficient in nutrients?
Electrolytes are more important
than eating liver?
Yep, 100%.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, that's what I've been just listening to my body, what I feel like and what makes me feel better. And I'm not trying to be carnivore. It's just what ends up happening.
So I'm glad you said that, because here's the thing. Everybody feels better the more carnivore they go across the board. The problem is people don't want to do that. In their head, they've got this resistance of, I don't want to just eat meat. I want this, I want that, I want this. And that's perfectly fine. But at some point, each individual has to come to that crossroads of, I really don't want to do this, but I feel nothing amazing when I do it. So now I have a choice to make. Which way do I want to go? And that's kind of where we end up. That's where I was. I started carnivore as an elimination diet to heal my IBS. And I was also very frustrated. I thought just the possibility from a performance perspective of being able to get stronger and build lean mass without getting fat was just the idea that could potentially be a thing, and without being overly complicated and super strict and counting just the idea of the things I had to go through to get there, but in the past, and to maintain it was just a pain in the ass. You get weak to get lean, you get fat to get strong. There's that back and forth of cutting and bulking and all these other, it just was so annoying. So the fact that over the past 5 years, I've been able to maintain between 11 and 12% body fat, gain muscle the entire time at 51 years old, and it's easy for me, don't think about what I'm doing, right, has been like just life-changing in my approach to fitness and the things that I can do. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into it, but most people, the more carnivore they go, the better everything starts happening.
And I think that goes back to what you said, the could, would, should, and that give yourself permission. If I want to have something that's not ideal, is it going to, like we were talking on the cruise, is that going to set you off into a binge and throw you off in the downhill? Or can you just have that, say, fajitas with nachos or something, and be okay? Like, okay, I had that.
And then you're not going to do that. You're going to do it, right? You're not going to do it once and then, oh, I'm going to do it tomorrow. Then, oh, I'm going to do it tomorrow, right? So that's another aspect of, once you get to where you're healthy and you're living the life you want to live, and you start living in that net gain, net loss mindset, then you don't want to lose what you have.
Yeah.
So when you do have, I'll have, let's see, we were on the cruise. I had some cheesecake, some of that sugar, low carb, no gluten cheesecake that I had. I had a whole plate. It was great. Done. That was great. That was it. That was my treat for the cruise.
Yeah. So you didn't
right. It's not like I'm longing, like, oh my God, I need more cheesecake. You know what I mean? Like,
you didn't go the next day and get 10 desserts.
Right. I enjoyed it. Okay, that was cool. Great.
Yeah.
Fun. That was it. Nice. Because number one, I'm at a place where I don't want to lose what I have, so I'm not going to repeat that. Number two, I understand what it's doing to my body, so I'm not making an excuse or trying to make up for a bad decision. I made the decision, I accepted the decision, and I went about my life.
Yeah.
Right.
So your relationship with food.
Yeah. And then thirdly, I'm healthy now. I'm not working from a deficit. Right. When you're working from a deficit, if we go back to that net gain, net loss mindset, and we're talking about investments and finances, most people that I work with are in severe debt, severe health debt. So when you're in severe health debt, you cannot afford to go buy that TV. You can't afford to go on that trip. You can't afford to go to the movies. You got to sit your butt at home, read a book, and don't spend any money. That's what you got to do.
That's what I'm doing right now because I bought the Pinoy metabolic testing. So I bought equipment that to follow my purpose and passion, not because I'm other debt of food. So going into the exercise part of it, as I talk about fat loss, performance, and longevity, I'm working with endurance athletes that listen to, like previous Debbie that did multiple Ironmans, marathons,
Stop running
50K
so
trail
much.
runs. Yeah, exactly. I was listening to podcasts and it was even 20 minutes cardio, zone 2 is all you need. And then sprints and lifting weights. And it's so hard to get people to, I think because we love, like I still train for triathlons, but I haven't raced since 2015. I still swim and I bike and I run and I love it. It's my time in nature. It's where my brain turns on when I'm on my bike and I enjoy it. I know it's not great for me. I don't go the ultra long stuff I used to. Even when I stopped racing, I would still go, I want 5-7 hour bike rides. So to get people to switch their mindset that, okay, you're not racing anymore. Maybe it's time for you to stop racing and retire and give it up and work on longevity, which would be, short workouts, some sprints, and then more work on, I think, strength training. So what do you find works great for people, improve the aging process? So you train your future self.
I think from a runner's perspective, let's talk to all you runners out there. One of the biggest things that I've seen in runners when they're realizing they need to make that change, I probably shouldn't be being as competitive. And just so all you runners feel good, feel better about yourselves. This is the same conversation that I've had with CrossFit athletes. It's the same conversation I've had with powerlifters, Olympic lifters, with football players. Like it's across the board. Like everyone, at some point in time, we got to let go. You know what I mean? Right. So, So the biggest thing I see with runners is not just changing the modality and reducing the amount of actual running or endurance that they're doing and getting more into strength training, but it's really about mobility and movement and fixing, because years of running and not doing much else, your body is great at running. There's a lot of stuff it's not good at. Right. So there's shoulder issues, you got hip issues, knee issues, ankle issues. I mean, there's so many things, range of motion in the rest of your body. There's the activation of other muscles you probably haven't used in 10, 15 years because you haven't ever needed to and when you're running. So there's a lot of things that comes to play when we talk about longevity and we'll just bring it down again, principles, right? Principles and concepts. We'll bring it down to the 7 essential movements. Okay. When you're running, you're great at the lunge. That's one of the 7 essential movements. That's essentially walking, right? Walking and lunging are the two movements in the 7 essential movements. That leaves 5 out. That leaves pushing, pulling, squatting, hinging, twisting. Right? You don't do any of those when you're running. So those are 5 basic essential movements you need to start working on. And in order to do that, that creates a whole litany of things that opens up a world of possibilities from new goals, new benchmarks, new things that you can start gauging your improvement. And it doesn't have to be running. So that's one of the things a lot of people, I think, with running, with any sport, again, powerlifters, CrossFitters, whatever. Well, if I give this up, how am I going to know if I'm getting better? What do I have to benchmark? What do I have to achieve? There's a whole, when you add that other stuff in, there's a whole another world that opens up to you.
It's so true. I mean, I literally would never do under an hour run. It's like wasted time, lame. An hour or hour and a half run during the week. And then my long run was 2 to 3 hours. Bike riding, at least an hour and a half weekdays, and go for, 4 to 7 hours on a Saturday when I was training for Ironmans. And it's so funny nowadays, like, okay, 45 minutes is okay. Now, like, okay, 30 minutes is good.
Yeah, right.
And today I think I did an hour, but the first part and last part were walking on the beach collecting sand dollars. And I went and did some 30-second sprints on the Torrey Pines Hill, and I did 30 seconds to minute intervals and worked on my strength. So it's so funny how you have to switch your mindset. And I find, my new me versus my old me, it's like, all right, this is fun, and find, as you say, new things to do, and be okay with it. Give yourself permission to do
Yeah,
that?
I went through that transition. For me, it was when I got out of the Army. The Army ruined me for running.
Oh,
Absolutely ruined me for running. Like the running in the Army is such a pain in the
don't you have to
ass.
chant too? Hoorah,
It's you
hoorah.
gotta, I mean, all of the stuff, but it's forced running. It's nothing anyone ever wants to do. You have to do it at their pace. You have to do it with people that like if someone's lagging behind, everybody's got to keep going so that person catches up. Like it's just there's just so many aspects to the way the Army does fitness or has done fitness in the past 20 years ago that just ruined me for running. Out of the Army, I was like, I am not running ever again. It's never happening again. And
Doesn't bring you
obviously
joy. Cut it
that's not
out.
true, right? So I got into fitness and was like, well, crap, now I got to start running. So when I first got back into fitness and started running, I still hated it. This is ridiculous. I'm dying out here. I can never go as fast as I want, like blah, blah, blah. And then I'll remember this super, super vividly. I remember one day I was running. I was so pissed off that I was running. Why am I doing this? This is BS. I hate this. And then I just stopped and started walking because I was just fed up with the whole thing. And it just came across me, it just hit me. You're not in the Army anymore. You don't have to do this. And I
Yeah.
was like, crap. I've been trying to run this whole time like I'm still in the Army. I'm still trying to run this pace. I'm still trying to run this fast. I'm still trying to run this far. There's this picture that I had in my head of what I was supposed to do when I ran. And it just dawned on me in that instant that I didn't have to do it that way anymore. I could do it how I wanted to do it.
Mhm. Yeah.
And from that point on, it was like, you know what? I'm going to run for 5 minutes and go back in. I don't care. You know what I mean? But then it got to the point where I could run a couple miles. I could do a 5K. And I still have no desire to run more than a 5K because I don't need to in my life. It's not anywhere in my life goals. But the fact that it changed how I enjoyed the process
Mhm.
and how I saw and how I perceived the process of running a million times over when I realized I could do it on my terms.
Yeah.
So
Great.
if someone has an expectation that they have to keep doing it a certain way, you can set it, you can do it however way you want,
Mhm. Yeah.
and you can change that.
Well, I think it is letting go. It's my thing from
Mhm.
yoga. I learned let go. And
Right.
that I used to be good, strong athlete, and I had a really long time. I struggled because I couldn't do a 3:12 marathon pace, and my half marathon was a 1:35 time. Was my
Mhm.
best time, and I would always race, and I would never do a marathon. And like slowest time was 3:45 or something time wise. And now the last few years I've struggled with my times running, and I had to get over just be happy. I can run,
You
my
can
knees
run,
work, my
right?
feet
Yeah.
work. I'm outside in nature and fresh air doing what makes me happy, and get over what pace that is and just let go of that. And I'm still don't believe that I'll never be able to be fast again. I don't want to use age as an excuse, but I just feel like you have to get rid of that. Oh, I used to do this, I used to that. I have these high expectations of
Absolutely.
myself that you have to
Yeah.
let go of that sometimes and just find the new you.
Find the new you, and nothing lasts forever, and you can never. It's impossible to always be at the top.
Mhm.
So you just find something else to be at the top of.
Yeah, that's why I think I always have to keep growing and learning and becoming a new person. My
Yeah.
journey.
Just it's so we go through that phase, you go through that season. I'm great at running. This is the things that I've been able to do. Okay, that's great. What's the next thing that I want to get good at?
Mhm.
Maybe it's mobility, maybe it's calisthenics, maybe it's strength training, maybe it's learning how to do freaking aerobics or something, or acrobatics or something, right? Maybe I want to go learn how to do trapeze.
Yeah,
There's so many things
pole
that
dancing.
because you're physically able, the door is open for you to
Yeah.
experiment. You don't have to pigeon. Why do we so, or why are we humans so keen on building an entire identity around one activity
Yeah.
and then never wanting to let go?
Yeah. Well,
We
yeah,
never
that's
want to let go
how
of it.
so many of us, I'm sure there's my listeners are a lot like me, that I was asked every single day for so many years, when's your next race? And
Right.
I wouldn't visit someone unless there was a race in town. Oh, well, there's a marathon. Do you want to come that weekend? And because that
Yeah,
I'm like,
right.
oh my God, that's the only thing people think I do. And I realized oh, that is my life. So, you know, until we moved, it was your whole life revolves around that because you do it for 10, 20 years. So you don't know any different. That's just how you roll. And when people ask you only to do stuff because of a race, or when ask you when your next race is, you realize that, okay, there's more to life than racing. If that's all people think I do, that's kind of sad.
Yeah.
So anyways, let's talk about, if we talked a little bit about fasting. A lot of people are getting confused to do, you know, these 24-hour, 48, 72-hour fasts as athletes.
Overrated.
12 to 16-hour fasts. You know what?
Overrated.
Yeah, overrated is your answer.
Overrated. Fasting is severely
because you
overrated.
get athletes are exercising and get cell autophagy and
Yeah,
get
everything,
nutrition.
every benefit that you get from fasting, you get from exercise. So if you're
That's what I was trying
exercising,
to say.
if you're also strength training,
Mhm.
there's got to be some strength training in there if you want to get the full range. Okay. Because then we talk about mitochondrial density, we talk about mitochondrial
Yeah.
just the number of mitochondria, things like that. So uh, we talk about mitophagy, we talk about cytokines and how that plays into
Mhm.
BDNF, and we talk about BDNF and brain function, and there's a
Yeah.
bunch of other things. So the combination of, and this is where we talk about functional fitness now, right? We're talking about building your body's ability to do a lot of things well,
Yeah.
right? So you need to be able to sprint, you need to be able to run for long distances, you need to be able to carry light load for long periods of time, you need to be able to carry or move heavy loads for short periods of time. So there's a broad range of things that we need to be able to do. And if you're only training one or two of them, you're missing out on half of your life. So, and we're talking about quality of life and longevity. So you need those 7 essential movements. You also need the 10 components of fitness, right? We need to be able to build strength and endurance and agility and coordination and balance and speed and power and accuracy of movement. We need all those things. So you can't get that just doing strength training. You can't get that just doing endurance training.
Yep.
You need all of it.
Yeah. And I think when people, because I did this too, because I got into fasting and eating just the fat all day and not enough protein, that I was probably not eating barely enough calories from activity load, because I was training clients, I was moving all day, owned my fitness studio back then. And then I started doing a 1 meal a day without knowing it, because I'd get home and it'd be 3 o'clock. Oh, I better eat. And I hadn't eaten really all day, but fat coffee, then I had 1 meal. And then I learned later that became trendy, 1 meal a day, OMAD. And I was thinking over the years, how's that good for people that are exercising as much as I am? My thyroid, everything's low, my hormones. So I'm trying to share that on the show. It's not for us.
It's not. It's not for anybody. The only people that should be fasting are people that have 300 pounds to lose, right? If you are severely obese and you have a ton of
Type
fat that your
2.
body can siphon off that fuel, then go for it. Have a blast. Fast your butt off. Now you should be exercising while you're doing it, because if you just lose all the weight and don't have any function, that's the whole different discussion, right? That's just a waste of time. But as far as athletes go, you need protein. I hate talking about food as fuel because it's so much more than fuel, right? But if we're going to use that picture, we're going to draw the picture of fuel, protein is your fuel for recovery.
Yep.
So if we need to stop thinking about fuel that we burn and start thinking about food that we use. And if we need to exercise and recover, then protein is what lets that happen. So you are not if you are not getting enough protein, you're not fueling your body properly. If we want to look at it from that perspective. I'd hate
And then
looking
you
at
do
it
a
from a fuel
fast.
perspective, but that's what it is.
But that's what people are doing, fasting on their rest days. Like, wait, that's when you need to have the protein.
That's when you need your protein the most.
So I don't know where you
reasons
can do fasting. It doesn't fit in your schedule.
Yeah, this is one of the things that that really drives me crazy is people that are like, well, I eat more on my workout days, I eat less on my days off. The days off is when you should be eating the most. That's when
you're
your body's
building.
rebuilding, right? So yeah,
Well, I say at least get bone
eat what
broth.
you need to eat.
Have like 6 cups of bone broth and put some oil in it, some ghee or some MCT or lots of butter. But you got to have food, maybe on a liquid day if you have some gut issues. But that's
if you're doing gaps or something like that, if you're trying to do an elimination thing, but not as a long-term recurring ongoing thing. Sure.
That's funny, because I learned about the GAPS diet from my sister-in-law about 15 years ago. And then you realize, oh, it was kind of carnivore healing diet. It was liquid.
100%.
It was organ meat and bone broth. and eat
Absolutely.
meat. And it's so funny. I
Wow,
just
imagine
realized that the
that.
other day, the
Imagine
GAPS
that.
diet. Oh, look at that. So other things I think on our list, training, we talked about doing all sorts of training, fueling, endurance. What are some other things that you think people, after being on the conference cruise, it just is what people are missing? Like I talked about chronic stress. If you're trying everything, but you're stressed out all day, living life
Yeah.
as a race, what do
Well,
you
I
find
actually want to
is,
talk to you about that because I have a concept for a book that I want to write that's all about stress.
hmm, I've got a few
The
ebooks on
yeah,
it.
a few thoughts on stress. No, because I came this, and I think stress is a big one. I think people don't understand stress enough. Um, Life is stress, and that's what I want to title the book.
Mhm.
Everything we do is
Hey, stress.
preparing for stress, dealing with stress, or recovering from stress.
Yeah.
Every function in our body, every action we take in life, like everything we do is stress. Whether it's a stressor, it causes stress, or it's a stimulus of some sort. So
Mhm.
I think understand that I think is a huge aspect of just the overall puzzle for people. And explaining the concept of allostatic load and chronic stress and acute stress and hormetic stress and eustress and de-stress and all the different stresses, right? They should get a shirt that has all the stresses on it. Like,
Yeah.
do you know what these are? Do you know where your stress is? Um, that kind of thing. But I think understanding that fitness and nutrition are the keys for helping you manage internal and external stress. And if you neglect either one of them, you will be ill prepared for the stresses that life puts on you.
Mhm.
And I think that's the biggest thing that people don't understand. People think that there's
Coping mechanism.
some aesthetic reason or some societal reason they need to eat well or they need to do exercise or whatever. So they have some picture or perception on the head and why they should, I hate that word doesn't work, why they should do this. And what they're not
Because they
realizing
read
is
it
that
somewhere, heard it
they
somewhere,
read it
they
somewhere,
should.
someone told them, their doctor said, whatever. Um, Nutrition removes and helps your body manage internal stress
Mhm.
so that if you do get something into your body, and this isn't just food, the better your nutrition, the better your immune system. The better
Yeah.
your nutrition, the lower your inflammation. So when we talk about inflammation, now I like to use the analogy of first aid responders. The more bad crap you put into your body, the more you make your first responders in your body have to work. And then when something really bad does happen to your body, they're taxed out. They don't got any more room. Guess
Mhm.
what? You're in the hospital
Yep.
because you got nothing left.
Yep.
You've been eating crap. Your body's inflamed. You got all these other things going on. Something bad happens, you're screwed. Right. So the better you can eat, the better your body can manage everything it needs to manage. And if something bad happens, you're in a much better position.
Mhm.
Okay. On the fitness side of things, training is your opportunity to prepare in a controlled environment for the external and physical stresses that life is going to put you in an uncontrolled environment.
Yep.
So that is your opportunity to be ready for anything. And if you don't take that opportunity, you won't be ready for anything.
Mhm. Yeah.
Right. And
But
that's how
less
that
is
works.
more, not more is not better.
Exactly. Absolutely. That's a whole nother
The
discussion.
Goldilocks effect. Yeah. So much. So true. So I got to wrap up, but I
Sure.
know you were I was watching the first episode of the Reversed
Mhm.
show. In 1 minute, did you get it? What do you biggest takeaway from that
Oh
experience?
my gosh. My biggest takeaway from the reverse carnivore season is don't eat crap, eat more meat. And it doesn't matter what person you listen to or what their message is, when you boil it down to the principles and the concepts of what they're talking about, that's what we're all saying.
Yeah.
Don't eat crap, eat more meat. And that's really the answer. If you just go with that, things will be a lot better.
But then you go listen to the doctors and they'll tell you opposite.
Well, but even the doctors, right? You look at, we had Dr. Ovadia, we
Not
had
those
Dr. Kelsey.
doctors, people's
Oh,
normal doctors.
regular doctors. Oh, ignore your regular doctors. I didn't
Yeah.
say that. The health disclaimer.
Yeah, don't listen to Coach Bronson. But that's the thing is that my next client, he's blood pressure. I can't have sodium. I can't do all that saturated fat on this, high fat meat diet. And then he goes to the doctors.
It's
They're
the best
paying
thing
these
for you.
high-end concierge doctors, and they're just
Right.
paying a lot of money, and they listen to what they say. I'm like, here's Dr. Ken Berry's video. Listen to him.
Yep. Yep. Even, I mean, yeah, there's so much information out there at this point. Just show them the Harvard study, right? 2,000 people on the carnivore diet, over 90% of them reduced diabetes medication, hypertension medication.
Mhm.
All of them lost weight. Most of them gained muscle, like complete and just 180 turnarounds in metabolic issues,
Yeah.
right?
It's
And it's
just
documented.
you don't need statin drugs usually.
Oh my
Ever.
God, statins are the worst.
I
Statins
know.
are the worst.
I know I need a whole episode on cholesterol. I'll get
Oh geez,
Eric, Dr. Westman.
get Dave on.
I know Dave. I asked
Get
him. I
Dave
need to
on.
do an episode with him too
Yeah.
on cholesterol. It drives me nuts. Everybody has that same conversation. Like, nah, why do we still talk about this? So,
Exactly.
anyways, where can people find you?
People can find me at coach.bronson on Instagram, on YouTube, and my website is coachbronson.com. And if you want to get my book, I really want everyone to get a hold of my book. It's Ultimate Ketogenic Fitness.
On Amazon?
It's on Amazon, the complete guide to keto. And it's not just keto. It's, again, like I said, philosophies and concepts of how this stuff works and how you can implement it in your life.
I have it somewhere on my shelf here. It is a great book. There, it says, show it on the screen.
I got one.
Yeah, you have one. It's, because you're so positive and you're really good at analogies and you're good at making it simple. So I think that's so appealing to people that are new to fitness too, and how to make it approachable. That is intimidating CrossFit type of workout. Is here's what to do and get started.
You don't got to start there, but you can end there for sure. If I can do it, anybody can do it.
I don't know. I'm still working at it. So thanks so much for your time today. And we'll look on YouTube channel. Is that your main place, or Instagram?
Yeah, Instagram. And I have a group on Facebook as well, but mostly probably Instagram, I guess. Yeah. I'm all over the place.
I got to just pick one.
Yeah, right.
Less is more, my mantra. For people that get chronic stress issues, less is more.
Yes, 100%.
All right. Thank you.
See ya.